Hey guys, it's Alaina. Today I wanted to follow on last week's theme where I did an opal, and I wanted to do one of my very favorite gemstones, which is called Labradorite. It's quite a mouthful, but it's one of my favorite stones because it has sort of a mysterious depth to it. It has a lot of blue and green and yellow, which are colors that I love, and you can see these flashes in it if you're holding it to the light, like you can see in this video here. So I think this is a really cool stone, and I'm really excited to go ahead and try to make this as a tutorial for you. So I will be using my iridescent brush set for Procreate to make this. And whereas last week I used mostly holographic brushes for the opal, this week I wanted to show you how to use the iridescent brushes, which do not have as much of a color range as the holographic brushes, so you can actually have more control with the iridescent versions. And I wanted that so that I could have mostly blue and green and yellow, similar to real Labradorite. So let's go ahead and get started. We are creating a new canvas at 3000 by 2000 pixels and selecting the Monoline brush from the default calligraphy folder that comes with Procreate, and selecting black as our color and drawing an oval and then holding it steady so that it snaps into a perfect oval, and just adjusting that a little bit, filling it with black. And then I'm turning on the arrow button and the snapping so that I can get this centered. And at this point, I actually decided I wanted that oval a bit smaller. So I went back to the arrow and just made it a bit smaller and centered it again. Now I'm adding a new layer and making that into a clipping mask. And I will go ahead and switch to my iridescent brush set and select the textured gradient. And as my color, I'm going to select this dark blue from my intense iridescent color palette. And I'm just adding some color onto here. You can see that it's mostly blue, but there is some purple and green in it, similar to how Labradorite would actually look. And I'm not just covering the whole thing because I do want this black to show through a bit more. So I've added a new layer now, and I made it into a clipping mask. Now I'm selecting the lines brush, and I'm going to keep on adding some different blobs here and there with this brush. Now I've gone back to my colors and selected green, and I'm just going to put a couple of flashes of green in here, and I will do the same with a yellowish color as well. Now I'm adding a new layer and making that into a clipping mask. And I will go ahead and select some different brushes and keep adding different flashes in these same green, blue, and yellow colors. Now I'm making a new layer and turning that into a clipping mask. And I decided to move that new layer down below the top 2 layers. So it's just over top of that first gradient layer. And now I'm switching to the default folder in Procreate that is called Touch-Ups. And there's a brush in there called Fine Hair. And I'm choosing black as my color and making sure I'm on this new layer by itself that I just made. I'm adding a couple of lines across in black and then holding that stroke before I let it go so that the lines are completely straight. And I'm going to keep doing this across these gaps where the initial gradient is showing through. And this is because if you have a look at Labradorite, you'll see that there is kind of a lines pattern across some of the parts of it, not the whole thing usually, but there will be some of this sort of lines texture peeking through. So I was trying to emulate that, and I actually tried quite a lot of the default brushes in Procreate before I came up with this method. But I just really wanted to have that perception of depth behind the flashes, which is kind of what you get with real Labradorite. So I'm just adding it along all of these gaps. And with that done, it looks a bit too harsh. So I decided to go to my adjustments and motion blur on the layer and then add just a bit of blur on those lines. And I don't want a whole lot, just a tiny bit to kind of give it this feeling of depth. So you can see it kind of shining through underneath of the flashes. So I hope that makes sense what I just did there. I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer on top of everything and change that to a vivid light blend mode. And now going back to my default airbrushing brushes that come with Procreate, my soft brush, still in black and moving the opacity down quite a bit. I'm going to go around the edges and just make this look a little bit more dimensional. So it's kind of like a stone that you would hold in your hand that is smooth around the edges. And I don't want to go overboard with this because it's already fairly dark, this design, but I just wanted to give it a little bit of a 3D look. So that's about it for this piece of Labradorite that we have painted today. I hope that you enjoyed this, and please let me know if you have any questions and I will be happy to help out. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing for more content like this. Thank you so much. I will see you next time.